Thank you, Sam. And let me also welcome all the folks to our presentation today that we have titled Safe Deposit Disasters. And as Sam and I have been talking all through the day, this is a very timely program because of what's going on in the East Coast of the United States, which we will be covering a lot of details about what is going to occur after the water recedes, and a lot of those safe deposit vaults are flooded up and down the East Coast. And we'll touch on that specifically during today's program. Before we get started, though, I would like to cover a few things briefly. First of all, as Sam said, the handout materials that you did receive, hopefully you did print those things out. And if you have multiple people listening in your group, each person should have their own set of handouts. That's important because today's program is very interactive, and you'll be taking a lot of notes today. And that handout will be your tool that you can take back to your workstation with you that will hopefully help you address any questions that consumers have or other people in your institution might have in the future. So again, take possession of that handout, put your name at the top of it, and again, be ready to take some notes. The second thing I'd like to mention is we are going to have a couple of question and answer periods today, and during those periods, the person in your group that is typically the one that has the questions is the one that's most familiar with your current safe deposit procedures. What I'd like you to do now is find that person in your group and have them sit directly in front of the computer keypad, because we welcome those questions. And as Sam said, we'll get to as many of them as we can today, and I'll address those questions later if we don't have time to cover all of them. And the third thing I'd like to mention is found on your page 2 of your handout, and it's my background. As Sam said, I've been doing this safe deposit training for a long, long time, over 40 years, by the way, and I got started doing it many, many years ago when I was a banker here in Houston, Texas. And as a banker, that's when I got involved in the safe deposit area, and I got involved in that area much like how most of our listeners got involved when I inherited that function at my last bank. And when I inherited that function, I didn't have a clue what they did in that department, and I went to a seminar similar to the one you're sitting in today and found out we had a lot of improvements that need to be made in our area. And disasters were one of the things that I had to handle at my last institution. My last institution had water in the safe deposit vault twice. And during those situations, I was the one in charge, and I had to handle those things, and I didn't have a clue what to do. Hopefully, after today's presentation, if you ever experience a disaster like a flood, a fire, or whatever, you'll be ready, because I'm going to give you some very specific things that have to be done before, during, and after those disasters occur. Now, the next thing I'd like to mention to you is on page 3 of your handout. I want to give you an overview of what the next 2 hours will consist of. First of all, we're going to start off with the worst fire disaster that's ever happened in safe deposit history. And folks, that happened over 10 years ago in New York City, like they're going through right now. But unfortunately, back then, it was a fire disaster during 9/11. And we're going to talk about what happened after those 2 jet airplanes hit the World Trade Center. And it's a situation that this institution was not ready to handle, and they did some things that got them in trouble later. And we'll hit on those things specifically. We'll hit on them today, but the TV reporters also hit on them when these things occurred. And they got more negative press than you could ever imagine for, again, the things they didn't do correctly. Then I've got about 5 current 2012 fires that have occurred throughout the United States in institutions that, again, weren't ready for their entire facility to burn down, and all the safe deposit boxes were sitting in the middle of those burning infernos. And we'll talk about, again, what they should have done before, during, and after those fires occurred. And I have very graphic pictures of what the financial institution looked like during the fire and after the fire went out. And every one of these institutions, their entire facility was totaled. Then we're going to talk about vaults that have filled up with water. And the flooding of safe deposit vaults are occurring from coast to coast because of hurricanes. They're happening because of rivers coming out of their banks. They're happening because of plumbing problems in the financial organization. So no one is immune to having water in their safe deposit vault. And we're going to talk about some lawsuits that have occurred after that flooding occurred. And unfortunately, in one of those lawsuits, an institution lost and had to pay out over $300,000 because of things they did prior to their vault filling up with water. Then after we get through scaring you to death with all those disasters, we're going to give you a test. And the test is easy. There's only 10 questions on it, and it will clearly show you how ready you are for a disaster to occur in your facility. And if you can answer these 10 questions in a positive manner, you're not ready for a disaster, and you need to get ready before that disaster occurs, because after it is too late. Then we're going to talk about another disaster that will ruin your day, lock someone in your vault overnight. And I've got about 8 different examples of institutions that didn't have good vault closing procedures that locked people in their vault. And those people range from an 86-year-old lady to an 18-month-old baby. And again, that will ruin your day when it happens, because again, you've got to know what to do and hopefully prevent that from occurring in your institution. Then we're going to spend some time today on another disaster that can occur, and it's called self-service safe deposit boxes. This concept is basically covering the entire United States now, and I'm getting call after call after call from institutions that are asking me for my opinion on whether they should do it. But the more frequent calls I'm getting now are from institutions that didn't call before, they did it, and now they're calling trying to figure out how to get rid of it. We'll talk about why those calls are coming in. And then again, another scary part of today's program is why you should never leave anyone in your vault by themselves. Never leave them in there alone, because, folks, you don't need a key to get in a safe deposit box. I'm going to show you in today's program some tools that are available online through mail order companies that will open your safe deposit boxes in seconds without a key. And with all of that, we will have a little rest period at the middle of the program. We are going to have a couple of question and answer periods, one following the rest period and one at the end. So please get your questions ready and submit them to Sam, and he'll feed those things to me at the appropriate time. So as you can see, we've got a lot of information to cover, and to do that, let's get started on the next page. And the next page, the title says World Trade Center Disaster, September 11, 2001. Over 10 years ago, this disaster happened in New York City, just like they're going through right now with the floods and all of that. But this disaster had an effect on the safe deposit area. And the first notification that I got that this area was affected is on page 5. It was an article that came out in the Associated Press talking about Bank of Nova Scotia. Bank of Nova Scotia was a safekeeping, had a safekeeping vault that housed over $200 million in gold and silver for their clients. And Bank of Nova Scotia was located in World Trade Center building number 4. And that's important because that was not one of the Twin Towers. That was a building right beside the Twin Towers that the towers came down and crushed that building. And inside that building, all of that gold and silver was still in there. The best thing about the Associated Press story, it said none of the vault staff that worked in that building were injured. No one got hurt. But all of that gold and silver, they couldn't get it out. And their fear was they couldn't get it out, but could a dishonest person sneak in there and take some of that stuff when it was unattended? So Bank of Nova Scotia hired a private security company. They put those security guards on top of the remaining buildings around World Trade Center 4 with binoculars. They couldn't get into the area because of the disaster, and they watched that building until every piece of rubble had been taken off of that vault, and they were able to get in and recover all of the valuable contents that were in there. So all of the valuables were recovered. They didn't lose a penny. No one got hurt. So this was a good positive story that came from the Associated Press. But the next story I read came from a news service called Reuters. Reuters News Service came out with an article talking about a bank that had a safe deposit vault facility inside one of the World Trade Center buildings. When the World Trade Center buildings came down, it fell on that vault. All of the people that had boxes rented inside that vault were very concerned, naturally, and they started calling the bank, asking when they could get their valuables out. The bank promised that all the box contents would be returned. They kept telling these people, you got to be patient with us. We've got to have time to get in there and safely get this stuff out and return it to you. This is what they were telling them by phone, by letter, by email, whatever way they could communicate to these box renters. This was the bank's story until December 3rd. From September 11th till December 3rd, that was their story, but on December 3rd, they changed their mind. And somebody in that bank came up with this nifty little story, or nifty little idea, and they sent letters to all of these box renters that they have determined that there's nothing of value going to be left of this stuff after they get in there, and that they have decided to just go ahead and enter that vault.